welcome to Judging by the Title, the podcast where we take a movie we've never seen and tell you what we think it's about based just on the title. Then, halfway through the podcast, we break to go watch the movie and then come back to talk about just how wrong we were. Or how right we were. Probably how wrong we were. On this episode, we have my buddy since middle school, Ashley Bamford, and we'll be talking about War Horse. Hey everybody, welcome to episode, this is either going to be 3 or 4 of the Judging by the Title podcast with my friend Ashley Bamford. Ashley, say hi.
Hello.
Yeah, Ashley and I have known each other since 7th grade?
7th grade.
It's a long time.
It's a good, 13 years now.
That upsets me. You just made me upset. Get off my podcast. I feel old now. Goodbye.
We're so old.
We're so old. Yeah. God, it was back in the aughts. Back in the late aughts. God. So anyway, in this episode, we're going to be talking about War Horse. The film, the movie War Horse. Just to remind you, neither of us have seen this movie. We've deliberately avoided finding anything out about this film. But we're just gonna tell you what we think it's about.
So I might have lied a little bit. I think I've seen a good, 20 minutes of this movie, but I cannot remember a single thing about it.
Great.
There is most likely a war. There is probably a horse. The only thing I can tell you for sure was Tom Hiddleston was in it.
That's important information. You know, you're the second... This is the third episode of this podcast I'm recording, and so far, 2 out of 3 guests have broken the rules and have seen part of the movie. My last guest, Jack, had seen pretty much all of Bird Box on silent on, a plane. So that's okay. Yeah, alright, so there's a war, there's a horse, there's Tom Hiddleston, Loki. Okay, that's something we could work with. So, War Horse. The horse is at war. Are the horses at war?
Yeah.
With each other?
Oh, I didn't think of that. That could be.
Okay, so the horses...
I was thinking I want to see horses get drafted.
That's... Okay, this is about... Yes, absolutely. There is a horse draft. They are drafting the horses. Okay, so it's War Horse singular. So this is about one horse that is at war. So yes. It probably starts off with his life before he was drafted. So what was this horse's life like before he was drafted into the war?
I'm trying to think of any other war movie I've seen. There's Gallipoli. I try to stay away from war movies. It's probably only ones that I've seen in class.
I did too, but I know that anyone can be drafted. So I think that before being drafted, this horse probably lived on a farm of some kind, as many horses do. Maybe?
I feel like that's a typical war movie plot line. It's going from the countryside to a war zone.
Yeah. So I wonder what he did on that farm. But this is a movie. This is a very special horse. So I'm going to say that this horse lived on no ordinary farm. This horse lived on a farm that was a training ground for genetically modified war horses.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so
maybe super speed horse or something.
A super speed horse, can consume a ton of hay and then perform acts of great strength. It can take maybe 6 or 7 humans on its back at once, not just 1 or 2. I think that this horse was a different type of horse, though, because they chose to make a movie about this particular horse. So I think this is the story of one horse who didn't really want to be a war horse. He was destined to be a war horse. He was bred to be a war horse. But, he has other ambitions. What are this horse's other ambitions? What does he like to do?
I feel like it's got to go something against the war thing and what he's been bred for. So something that, wouldn't require a lot of strength or speed or anything. maybe he just wants to be an actor. Maybe he's a theater kid.
Are you pitching BoJack Horseman? Are you using my podcast to repitch BoJack Horseman?
Yes, I am.
He wants to be a theater horse. He wants to be a horse, to play a horse in plays and movies where they need horses. And so, yeah, except he gets drafted into war.
I guess Warhorse would be his ideal film.
Maybe.
They would need a bulky...
It's his ideal film. It's about a horse who was bred to be a war horse, who successfully pitches his life story of not wanting to be a war horse to a film studio, and they make a movie about him called War Horse. This is a movie about the making of the movie War Horse.
It's a biography piece. Is there a word for that?
Biopic.
I went to film school.
I
I should know
was
this.
gonna say, Ashley literally went to film school. Ashley, it's a very good filmmaker herself, but I won't make you blush on this podcast. But yeah, no, it's a biopic about this horse. What is this horse's name? We haven't given him a name.
Oh, Loki had a... Bring Tom Hiddleston back, and Loki had a child that was a horse. What was its name? Sleipnir or something?
Sleipnir. Poor horse. Poor actor horse given a name that is hard to pronounce. You can't get people to remember it. Sleipnir. Yeah.
It's hard to pronounce. It doesn't come with a lot of great connotations.
Okay, and what is Tom Hiddleston in this movie? What was he doing in the brief part you saw? Do you remember, what he was doing?
I want to say he was riding a horse, but I really don't remember.
That's a pretty safe bet. Okay, he was riding a horse, so he is a person who endorses the riding of horses. He's for the subjugation of horses. That's a whole other dimension to this. Is he was being subjugated to be a war horse, to be a servant of the people, and he wanted to do his own thing and be an actor. So Loki, Tom Hiddleston is probably the bad guy. He probably is the one who trained him to be a war horse. He probably is, the person that ran the farm where they bred and trained these genetically modified war horses.
That brings up this whole issue of horse rights.
That's true.
Should they be drafted? Do they have the option to say no to the war and go do their own thing?
That's absolutely true. It's they probably don't. They're just bred to be war horses, and the best horses are drafted, and you can't be a conscientious objector as a horse.
No.
Yeah. I bet this horse was the first horse to try to get a student deferment, because he was in acting school. And he applied for a student deferment from the draft, and they said, "You're a horse, you can't do that." And he said, "Well, I'm a student. I'm a horse, but I am also a student. And I deserve to get a deferment from the draft." So this must have been a long time ago if it was the draft. So do we think this is Nam? Do we think it's World War II?
Yeah, one of those
I'm
two.
going to say it's Nam.
Definitely an older piece.
Yeah. I feel if it was Nam, he would have had some support from, the anti-Vietnam protesters in order to get his rights as a horse who has been drafted. But it could also be World War II, because, I want to see a horse fight a Nazi. That's not a reason that it would be that, but I want to see a horse fight a Nazi. Yeah. That
would feel so good.
Just a horse kicking a Nazi in the jaw. That's what we need in 2020. Now I'm going to be so disappointed if this movie doesn't actually contain that. Yeah, but...
A giant super horse just kicking over a Nazi.
Yeah, he can do it. He can do it with one kick. Yeah, and because he's a was horse, he can kick all the way up to the jaw. The guy doesn't even have to be crouching. Yeah, but let's back to our horse. Sephenir. What is the name? Syphilis.
Syphilis. That's better. I think it's Sleipnir or something like that.
Sleipnir. Yeah. So Sleipnir is becoming an actor. He's in acting school. He's trying to get the student deferment. And what happens to him in the process? What challenges does he face throughout this movie? How does he get cast as the war horse? How does he get cast as the War Horse in the movie War Horse? That the movie War Horse is about?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Got a cat.
Yeah, a cat just appeared. A cat is helping us. Ashley's cat is helping us come up with the reason why this guy got cast in War Horse, the movie. Hi, Zelda. Oh, it's so fluffy. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh my god! I hope the listeners can hear the growl of that cat. Jesus Christ. If you didn't hear Ashley's cat just growl like a fucking demonic beast. Jesus.
Very crazy.
Oh my god. But anyway, I think Zelda's growl helped me figure out exactly why this horse was cast in the movie War Horse. Is that this film, and the film that is the actual film that the film is being made about. There are too many dimensions to this. But I think this movie is about the movie War Horse that was made by anti-Vietnam protesters in support of this horse. I already forget his name. Snifer, whatever his name is. And they made this movie in support of him and his horse rights and his conscientious objector actor horse rights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold up. So you're saying there is a movie War Horse, like, about him, and then this movie is also called War Horse, and it's about the making of War Horse.
Yes, I think that this movie, well, we know it was recent, because that's Tom Hiddleston in it. It was made in the last couple of years, and the movie is about a movie that was made in probably the early 70s, called War Horse, that was either maybe dramatized, maybe a documentary about this horse actor, conscientious objector. And it was a fluff piece for the anti-Vietnam War movement.
Okay. You know, they did something similar with, I want to say Apocalypse Now, but I don't think it was like a here's the real story of the actors. I want to say it was the director's wife just shot a bunch of behind-the-scenes footage and made a documentary about the making of it.
It's like this, exactly, except instead of, like, the documentation of the making of a gritty movie about the realities of Vietnam, this is the documentation of the making, or a dramatization of the making of a movie about a horse. So, ultimately, I think this movie really, like you said, it's about horse rights. It's about this horse getting his rights as a genetically bred war horse who wants to be an actor. So, like, what are the demands that the war horse made? What were his demands for his rights?
Definitely, like, the right to choose whether or not to go to war, like, against the draft.
Definitely. Humans did not have that right, but, you know, we can give it to horses first.
You know what?
Yeah. We're supposed to register for the draft.
When did that happen?
We have to register now. Yeah, so we're both supposed to. I don't know if I'm going to leave this in the podcast because I don't want someone to call me and be like, "You have to register for the draft." But yeah, we're supposed to register for the draft.
Not do that.
Just ignore it. Just ignore it. I've ignored it like a parking ticket. Yeah, and I think this war horse. I think he'd also demand the right to choose whether or not to be ridden.
I think that's also a big part of being a horse.
Yes. Yes. I think he would also demand hay. Just not specifically an amount of hay, just hay, just a supply of hay.
That's a good demand for sure. I think he would be one of the people pushing for free tuition, being an art student and all.
Absolutely. It must be, you know, as a horse, probably the only employment he could find would be being ridden. But then that breaks the other right, which is choosing whether or not to be ridden. And he should not have to sell his body as a genetically modified war horse in order to get employment, in order to pay for tuition. So, you know, my genetically modified war horse body, my rights.
The horse equivalent of prostitution?
riding horses is absolutely the horse equivalent of prostitution. That is, you see, this is what this podcast is all about. We've just come to a revelation.
Absolutely
Thank you,
no
Ashley.
shame to sex workers or horses that choose to be ridden.
No, it's absolutely. It's absolutely no shame to either. I completely understand, and I like riding horses, but from now on, I'm going to, quietly whisper to the horse, "Do you want to be ridden?
Yeah.
Do you want to be ridden?"
It's good to get that consent first.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the horse can respond, but I'll work it out. I'll work it out when the time comes for me to ride a horse again.
There you go.
Yeah, anyway, so we're coming towards the end of the first half of this podcast, but do you have any other thoughts on what War Horse could be about? Anything you think might happen in the movie?
No, I think we nailed it.
Yeah, I think we should do one more thing before we leave, though. It's become a trend in our episodes that we do a reenactment of a scene in the movie, and I think we should do a reenactment of a scene that would take place between this war horse and Tom Hiddleston, when the war horse is telling Tom Hiddleston he wants to be an actor and not just a war horse. Ashley, would you like to be Tom Hiddleston or the war horse?
I'll be Tom Hiddleston.
You'll be Tom Hiddleston? Okay, I'm the horse.
Okay. I'm really bad at improv. You start.
Okay, it's okay. Nobody said anyone was good at improv on this podcast. Okay. His name's just gonna be Tom Hiddleston for the purposes of this, since we don't know the character's name.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom! Nay, I want to be an actor!
You want to be an actor, but you're my prized horse. You're the best one on this farm.
I didn't choose this life, Tom. Nay, I didn't choose this life. Since I was born, you've been training me for your own pleasure and fulfillment. I want to be an actor, Tom. I want to be on screen. I don't want to be ridden. I don't want to carry men on my back and be part of the war and trample people. I want to bring laughter and joy through cinema.
You'll never make it as an actor. You were born to go to war.
Tom, you underestimate me. I just got cast in a student short film, Tom. My career is starting. Nay.
You think that'll bring you money? How are you going to pay your student loans?
I'm working on it, Tom. Nay. I gotta deal with Sally Mae. I'm gonna pay it in hay. Okay. Good job. I think we absolutely nailed it.
I think so too.
I think that, yeah, he pays Sally Mae in hay. And that's gonna happen. All right.
I think so. I definitely want to see kicking Nazis, or did we decide what war this is? We keep going back and forth on it.
I think we're oscillating between World War II and Nam, but we settled on Nam in the end.
Okay. I want to see a horse kicking an opponent, and I want to see the issue of horse rights coming up.
Yes, and I want the horses to get their rights, though I doubt they will, because as of now, horses are ridden without their consent.
Yes. So we know it doesn't end great.
It doesn't. But I look forward to seeing this film and talking to you about it, so thank you so much for doing this, and we will go watch War Horse and come back and talk to you all about what we think about it. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Everybody, so we're back. We have watched Horse Movie, The War Horse, and we now know what it's about. It is not about an actor horse playing a war horse. It is, in fact, about a war horse. So I'm going to go ahead and read the IMDb description of War Horse. Let me just pull it up, because I didn't prep properly this time and pull up the IMDb description. War Horse. I'm typing it in as we speak. Alright, so the actual description of War Horse on IMDb is: young Albert enlists to serve in World War I after his beloved horse is sold to the cavalry. Albert's hopeful journey takes him out of England and to the front lines as the war rages on. So...
Okay, that only described, like, the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Pretty much! he doesn't actually go to war until... That actually gives away a plot point, because it's a reveal that he is now in the war, because at the beginning, when the war starts, which the beginning isn't even when the war starts, like 30 minutes into the movie when the war starts, he's too young to enroll in the army. But then it's revealed, like, spoiler alert, like 3/4 of the way through the movie, that, oh my god, he's on the front lines now, he's old enough, he and his brother are now in the war with the horse. So yeah, Ashley, what did you think of this movie?
It was a slog. Like, now I remember why I only watched 20 minutes of it and then completely forgot everything.
Okay, so Ashley watched this movie before me and said, and messaged me, not gonna lie, it's a bit of a drag. So I was expecting to hate this and be bored, but feel free to make fun of me, but I kind of really enjoyed this movie.
It was a bit... Okay, so when I watched it back in college, I was definitely just watching it to see Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
And he was there for like 5 minutes and died immediately, and so once that was gone, I was like, there's nothing for me here. This time, now that I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and watch this whole thing, I felt a little bit more invested in the horse.
Oh, I wasn't invested in the horse at all. Like, I was... Don't get me wrong. I didn't give a shit about the horse. At the end where they were like, we're going to use some of our medical supplies to fix this horse, I was like, save that for the people. You're in World War I. You barely have any medicine as it is. Like, you have, like, some gauze and some, like, really, like, rubbing alcohol. That's all you have, and use it on the people. But I was like, kind of invested in, like, the soldiers and in the family, but the horse, no, I wasn't invested in the horse whatsoever. And you were, that's true that you were supposed to be invested.
Some things that I did not realize until halfway through the movie when I was like looking at facts about it. I did not know this movie was distributed by Disney. This is a Disney movie.
Yes, and directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, that too. Like, okay, he's come a ways since, 70s blockbusters.
Yeah, which explains, the Steven Spielberg directing it explains why Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch as well, and Professor Lupin, I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who played Professor Lupin, it explains why they were all in this, because they would not have signed up.
Lupin?
The guy who, like, was gonna buy their farm and, like, take their farm from them at the beginning, and he was like, if your horse can't plow, if your horse can't plow, you're going to... I'm gonna take your farm. Yeah, that's Professor Lupin.
It is. Okay. I knew I recognized him from something, but I was going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and the mom, too, I swear was in Harry Potter, but I have no idea what she played. She was probably, like, some background person in Hogsmeade.
I mean, England's only so big. I'm pretty sure almost everybody there was
like
in Harry Potter at some point.
They have, like, 5 actors, and they're all in War Horse, Harry Potter, Sherlock, and Doctor Who.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, wait, I hope I really now have a fantasy of the BBC, like, finding out about this podcast and being like, this is so disrespectful. It's like, that would be wonderful if that's how this blows up. But, just Eliza's fantasies here.
Getting trashed by the BBC.
Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing Hiddleston and Cumberbatch for the, like, 20 minutes that they were in this movie and then died because they didn't realize that machine guns exist in the late 1910s and the Germans have them. But I think part of the reason I like this film and that it did sustain me at some level was that I liked that there was kind of a subtle anti-war message. And I'm probably reading too much into it, but I like the scene where, like,
Really?
the horse is caught in the barbed wire, and then the British soldier and the Kaiser soldier end up having to bond and, like, work together to get the horse out. That being said, I liked it, but I would not have probably finished or ever watched this movie to begin with if it was not for this podcast. Like, I probably wouldn't have finished it. I probably would have... It's true that I probably would have looked at the timestamp and been like, I don't want 2 more hours of this. It's so long.
And this is based off of a kid's book.
A kid's book, it feels like something they'd make you read in, like, 6th grade social studies. And this movie also feels a bit like something they'd make you watch in 6th grade social studies when they don't feel like teaching. Which is appropriate that I'm watching this with one of my middle school friends. Because it's like, it's the kind of thing they would have made us watch at Severna Park Middle School. When they didn't feel like teaching.
Can you picture us back in 7th grade watching this in English class? No, because we didn't do anything in that class.
Nope. Oh my god. 7th grade English class was wild. That was a wild time.
This is absolutely unrelated, and you can cut this out if you want, but, like, oh my god, my brother ended up having that same teacher who I don't remember. God, we did literally nothing in that class. But she switched to math, I think. My brother had her as a math teacher, and he was like, oh my god, she was so strict. We had so much work. I'm like...
Yeah, meanwhile, we were watching the equivalent of War Horse and writing, like, a 1-page book reports on it. I didn't learn shit in 7th grade English, but I had a good time. I'm not cutting that out. That's very relevant. The people need to know. Need to know for context. But I also had in my notes that there's an amazing shot. Like, honestly, one of my most favorite transition from one shot to another I've seen in a film is when they zoom in on this scarf that the mother is knitting, and the scarf fades into a field.
That was so pretty. I was like, oh, I love that.
It was pretty, but it was also ridiculous. I'd also like to point out, speaking of pretty but ridiculous, I'd like to point out that even though I did at some level really enjoy this movie, it was also a meme. I mean, the whole thing is a meme.
A little bit.
The whole thing needs to be farmed from memes. Like, there's a scene where they're in the trenches, and they're all going, it's a horse, it's a horse, it's a horse, it's a horse.
Yes. Oh my god, okay, hold up. I took a screenshot. I guess I'll send this to you via Facebook. I could not stop laughing at this. He's, like, holding his horse. I'm like, it's supposed to be a sweet moment, but, like, this looks like the cover of a Nicholas Sparks book.
Okay, Ashley just sent me a photo. Oh my god. Ashley just sent me a photo of Albie, the boy who raised the horse, embracing Joey the war horse, and it's so sensual. It's like there were so many very sensual shots with the horse.
It reminded me so much of this.
Alright, Ashley has sent me another... Oh my god, Ashley now just sent me a romance novel title that's like... Ashley just sent me a cover of a romance novel that's called But You're a Horse, and it's a woman hugging a horse very sexually. And, I mean, honestly, that's the equivalent of all of the horse embracing scenes in War Horse.
Like, spot the difference. They look like they're gonna bone.
Yeah, like, I was ready for him to make out with the horse. Like, he really loves that horse, and it's supposed to be... And I know people love their horses, but this boy really loved his horse. It's implied that he joined the army in World War II to find his horse.
I'm convinced that's the only reason.
It's just to find the horse. Just to find the horse. Yeah, and keep in mind, in World War II, they show this... Keep in mind, in World War I, and they show this in the movie, if you, like, dodged the army, you got shot. Like, once you're in, you're in. Like, that's another thing about this movie is, like, I didn't know that, like, if you retreated back to your trenches when you were supposed to be fighting, they would shoot you dead, even if you were, like, on their side, because they were like, nobody fucking retreats. And this guy signed up for the army that you cannot get out of, the World War I army, to find a fucking horse.
Yeah. 5 years later. 4 or 5 years later.
God, the horse people must have loved this movie. The horse people must have really liked this movie, because they're like, somebody gets it.
I think you chose the wrong person. I think you needed to get, like, a horse girl or a furry up in here and gotten their opinion.
A horse girl. There was that French countryside girl.
Oh, no, I mean, like, as a guest. Do you have any friends that are horse girls? Oh, an observation I made. So everybody that, like, adopted Joey the horse after he was sold, dies. Everybody's like, this is my horse, I'm taking care of it, dies. And I made a note that was like, except Emily. I like Emily, she's cute. And then, spoiler, at the end I was like, oh, scratch that, Emily's dead too.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, like, Albie was destined to be his true owner, because, yeah, everyone who adopts Joey and takes care of him ends up biting the dust, either because of the Kaiser or because of a mysterious illness that they couldn't treat in 1918. And oh my god, that's true. That's kind of dark.
It made me kind of glad when the grandfather was like, actually, Albie, you take Joey. I'm not going to keep him. I'm like, okay.
So you were rooting for the fact that a little girl was dead because it proves your theory.
Basically. It proves my theory.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, my plan.
And the grandfather was like, this is my horse now. I need this. I'm like, you just signed your death warrant. And then he gave him up. I'm like, okay, fine. You're free to live. You're alone in this world, but you're...
That was that's a really good observation. I'd also like to point out that, among other things, the Kaiser were really abusive to their animals.
Yeah.
Like, I know the Kaiser did a lot of things, but if you needed something to add to the list, they were also very abusive to their animals. I don't know why I never connected that this, like, army that was just, like, trying to take over all of Europe, like, of course they'd be abusive to their horses. like, that kind of fits, but, yeah.
Another observation I made that is far less, like, intelligent. When he's trying to get Joey into, like, the harness for the first time, and he puts it over his own head and then slides it onto the horse, I'm like, that's how my parents used to trick me into getting dressed when I was little.
Oh, that's cute.
They would take, like, my shirt and then scrunch it up and then hold it up to their face and go, I need a kissy, and so I'd kiss them and, like, shove it over my head before I could run away. I'm like, they just pulled that same move on a horse.
That's cute. I had a dirtier observation of that scene, of them in the, like, plow collar together, like, held together by this collar. It was... I couldn't not see the horse scenes as a little bit sensual. It was weird. Yeah. Which I was fully expecting from this movie, and I would have been disappointed if we did not get some sensual horse scenes.
That is fair.
Alright.
It's not quite prostitution, but, like, we did get some sensuality in there.
We did get some sensuality, horse sensuality in the film. And also some wonderful British accents.
Mm-hmm. We did call it with the farm. We thought it was going to take place on a farm.
We called it with him starting on a farm.
War movies always start on a farm.
And we did call Tom Hiddleston making this horse do something he didn't want to, but except in this case, it was go to war.
Yeah.
For the British in World War I. All right, so.
Oh, also,
Ashley, do you have any?
What was it? Not an actor, but he did look just like BoJack Horseman, so I think I deserve a point for that.
He did look like BoJack Horseman.
The little diamond on his forehead. They're identical.
He looked exactly like BoJack Horseman. What if Warhorse was the inspiration for BoJack Horseman? And what if, like, literally, what if the creators of that show sat down and were like, oh my god, like, what if there was a show about the horse actor who played Warhorse?
Yeah, they're like,
I think we're onto something.
Okay, maybe we can make it a little more relatable. Let's do, like, a sitcom from the 90s, something everybody watches, not this Not the
specifically
Disney
the
Spielberg.
2011 film Warhorse. Okay, and I know we have to go, and we're going a little overtime, but like one more thing is, for some reason, and as a film scholar, you might know this movie for some reason didn't look or feel like it was made in 2011. It felt like it was made like long before that.
Yeah, I thought that too. I think it's like the wide open planes and shots. It felt a lot like a Western film almost.
Oh.
Not even just because like I noticed a lot of time I was like the sky looks fake. Did they digitally insert the sky into these shots? And I don't think so. I think it's just they reflected the light too harsh back onto the actors. So they were like, the sun would be setting behind them and then they'd be like bright white lights in their face. Like, that might be why it just doesn't mesh well, but like...
Oh, that's super interesting. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense, because, yeah, at some points I was like, this lighting kind of looks like 90s lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, modern day movies, how often do you see, like, that much sky?
That's true. You do in No Country for Old Men, which we reviewed on another podcast. Go listen to episode 1 and listen to us trash No Country for Old Men in the second half of episode 1. So far, not a great record for movies with a lot of open sky on this podcast. All right, Ashley, do you have any final thoughts on the Warhorse?
Let me just scrub through my notes real quick. No, I think that was I don't know if they ever said... Did they never mention that the goose is named Harold in the movie?
They never mentioned the goose is named Harold. Also, I forgot about the goose.
Because I watched it with subtitles on, and it never said, like, a goose. It would always say, Harold honks. I'm like, Harold? I guess the goose is named Harold.
That's ridiculous. They named in the subtitles, the guy writing the subtitles just named the goose Harold.
I don't remember if they ever said it aloud or not, but like, the goose was definitely Harold.
Alright, Harold the Goose is... Alright, this movie should have been called Harold the Goose, and I'd like to propose a spin-off, Harold the Goose. Spielberg, Amblin Studios, contact us. We will make the Harold the Goose your sequel to Warhorse. He doesn't go to war, he just lays eggs and shit.
No, what if Harold goes to World War II?
War
Goose.
War Goose. Alright. War Goose. Tune in next time when we pitch our film, War Goose. Alright. Ashley, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for watching this film. And trudging through it.
It was a good time. Well, talking with you was a good time. The movie, a little bit less so. Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Alright, so that's been episode 3 of this podcast. Thank you again, Ashley, and we will see you next time. Bye! Thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of Judging by the Title. If you liked that, please follow us on Spotify, or you can subscribe to the Judging by the Title YouTube channel. Bye-bye. Nay!